plan for what you're going to be studying and how you're going to be studying it. A lot of students tend to think of plans that will work just into their schedules and they'll study kind of just when they have time. But the real way to get in the studying that you need is to make actual hard and fast appointments in your calendar with yourself to be studying exactly the things that you need to for this test. The reason this works is having something specific in your calendar and at a specific time and with specific details about what you're going to do is way closer to what's actually going to happen than if you just said, I'm generally going to study at that time. Generally going to study at that time is a great way to demotivate yourself and sometimes makes it so that the studying doesn't get done at all or doesn't get it done effectively. So make sure you're making these specific appointments in your calendar, and that's going to get you the studying that you need to get the points that you need on test day. Also note the graphic on your screen here. We're still going over things that you need to know about the test, and in this case we're specifically learning about study skills. So let's go ahead and look at some of the things that you're going to need to know about your study plan. The very first step that you want to take in making a good study plan for your MCAT countdown to test day is to actually register for your MCAT. You want to register as soon as possible. Some of you may have registered already, some of you might be thinking about it, and then some of you may just be waiting for the website states to become available. In any case, just register either now or as soon as you can. One major consideration, too, when you're picking your test date is you want to pick the best date for you. Make sure it's going to work with your schedule, upcoming events in your life, that sort of thing. And as a reminder, you can register at aamc.org, and captest.com or giving 1-800-CAPTEST a call are also good places to go for resources on thinking about how to schedule the exam. Once you have your exam scheduled, it's time to start thinking about making a study calendar. Now, like we said, you want to put specific appointments basically with yourself in order to make sure that you're getting the studying that you need for the test. So let's talk about how to do that. What to put in your calendar. First of all, you want to put in time for obligations. We're talking meals with people. We're talking going to the gym. We're talking school, work. All those things should go into your calendar first. The nice thing about doing this is you'll see all the spaces in between where you can start to plan these study appointments. So other things that you want to put in there are things like I said, time for family and friends, meals, going out with them. And then also on top of that, you want to put one day off each week. And I'm just talking about one day off for taking time off from the MCAT. So you'll still do all of your other things, laundry, going to the gym, driving to various places that you need to go. But one day off from the MCAT should help you digest the information that you've been studying all this time. So for the actual studying that you're going to plan in, there's a couple questions that you want to answer to make these appointments most properly. First of all is going to be how long you want to study. Now, it's really however long you have in the day to study, but if you want to segment out a day where you have a lot of time to study, it's best to put 3-hour breaks. And you can have a couple of these breaks every day, but 3-hour breaks in your day where you don't do anything but study. So you're breaking out all the other things from that time and just focusing on studying 3 hours at a time. All right, and like I said, how often? 6 days a week because you have that one day off every week. And then other than that, it's just any time that you can fit in that you're not already doing something else, that goes into MCAT studying. We'll talk about what to study in just a moment, but for the breaks, you want to put them in the middle of these chunks of time that you're already studying. So the best times that we found for breaks, after talking to lots of students and seeing what works for them the best, is definitely to do a 10-minute break every hour that you study. And if you are doing a couple of 3-hour chunks of studying in one day, it's good to put 2 hours in between each of those 3-hour chunks. Again, just to let your mind reset and focus on everything that you've just learned and get ready to learn the next round of things. What to study is a very important part of what you're going to put in your calendar. So let me show you an example calendar over here that shows exactly what you'd want to put when you're figuring out what to study. Now notice in this example calendar, yes, obligations are written in already. They've got the gym written in here. They've got class written in here. But also notice anytime that there's something going on with the MCAT, so we have a 3 p.m. appointment, a 4 to 5 p.m. appointment, and then some appointments in the afternoon, it doesn't just say study for the MCAT. It says a specific thing to do. Do any review from the last MCAT class, or read the MCAT chapters for your upcoming MCAT class. These are the types of things that you want to put in your MCAT calendar. Notice that they're very specific. This avoids vague open blocks of time. Vague open blocks of time tend to lead to getting demotivated and not focused. Whereas if you have a specific basically appointment for yourself whenever you need to do a specific task for the MCAT, it's much more likely to get done and done at the time that you scheduled. So with these calendars, we want you to be very specific. And then along with being specific, we want you to be reasonable in that you could fit each of these tasks in the time that's given, and also be reasonable that you need that one day off each week. One final note about the scheduling, we recommend that you schedule every week about the same, but allow yourself to be a little flexible at the beginning of each new week so that you can make these calendars specific for exactly what you're going to need that week of studying to make sure it aligns with your class or your specific studying needs. You can see the Kaplan tip at the bottom of the page echoes what we've been talking about already. Make sure that you're specific in your scheduled blocks of studying so that you can stay focused. So this calendar is really important. In fact, it's so important we want you to make a calendar as soon as you're finished watching this lesson or this session. It's going to be part of the regular homework that you have after this session, along with all the other homework that you have to do. Now, maybe a calendar isn't how you've always organized your studying, especially, or maybe even your life. However, the MCAT's really important, so it's worth it to try to do something special, something on top of what you normally do to keep yourself organized, to make sure you stay on track. You do not want to get off track in your studying. This is one of the biggest tests that you'll ever take, and so making this calendar and using it throughout your studies is going to help you stay on track and be where you need to be with your MCAT studies. If you're not quite sure how to make the calendar, use this lesson to guide you, but you can also ask your Kaplan teacher if you have one, or you could ask your pre-med advisor as well. Now let's move into talking about the MCAT Lucky 7. The MCAT Lucky 7 is 7 tips that are going to help you get successful study habits. The first tip is to utilize all of your resources to make sure you maximize your studying experience. Now you have a lot of resources. You have your books, you have your high-yield problem-solving guide, and your quick sheets that come with the class. Those are definitely worth exploring and making sure you know everything about them so you can effectively do your homework. And you also have your online material as well. If you haven't explored it yet, go ahead and take even up to an hour exploring all the different material that you have in your online study plan. Then once you've gone through all of these resources, make sure you stop and ask yourself during your MCAT studying, are you effectively using all these resources and are you using them fully? Are you using the MCAT science videos? Are you using the MCAT channel? Are you using the passage-based quizzes? Are you using QBank? And are you using them all fully and effectively to make sure you get the most out of your studying? Another successful study habit is to commit to your study and homework schedule. Like we said, make each of these blocks of scheduled study time be like an appointment, so that if you don't end up studying during that hour, it's like you missed an appointment and you'd have to reschedule it. Sometimes students get into the habit of listen now in class and just kind of muddle through the class and then study later once the class is over and you're right before you're taking the test, but this isn't the most efficient way to study. Rather, make sure that everything that you need to get done, plus extra things, are in your calendar and that you stick to that calendar. Now for number 3, you have to realize that a lot of humans are just creatures of habit, and you can get into the habit of taking test after test and just seeing your score and moving on to the next test. We do think that taking a lot of practice tests are good, but make sure that you're actually going into these tests when you're done and seeing which mistakes you've made. Realize that when you learn from a mistake, you're not only learning that content better, but the MCAT is a predictable exam, so you're learning how to answer those types of questions better. So you're going to be able to answer questions better just in general on the test when you review this material. Also, make sure you adjust your study plan as needed based on how you're doing each of these practice tests. And when you're taking these tests or really doing any type of MCAT practice, you want to make sure you're in the most test-like environment possible. We're talking probably a library, since it's quiet, but there are still people moving around doing their own thing. This is an ideal situation because you're going to get used to being in an environment like that, and on test day, it's going to feel very comfortable and you'll be very used to it because it's the way that you studied. One major note here, do as much practice on the computer as you can. The MCAT is a computer-based exam, and looking at a computer for a long time is something you're going to have to get used to before test day to make sure that on test day you don't get eye strain or backaches, some of the common things that come from sitting in front of a computer too long if you're not used to it. When you're taking these practice tests, or doing questions in your homework, or doing homework in the back of the lesson book, or doing the passages that you find in the passage-based quizzes, or really just any question that you ever do for practice for the MCAT, it's good to make sure that you go back and learn from any mistake that you've made or any answer that you've got right but you're not quite sure why you got it right. It's good to just take a look at every single question that you complete, make sure you understand the science, and make sure you understand the reasoning behind that exact question type. When you get to the end of these tests, you want to take a look at your score, but don't let that score affect you on too deep of a level. You will see change over time if you put in the effort that you need and use the Kaplan resources appropriately. So you'll see little incremental changes. Don't always be focused on that end number and let it make you stressed out or anything like that. We want to make sure that you get the incremental changes that you need over time to be able to approach your goal MCAT score. And finally, considering all these other previous steps that you need to take for getting successful studying done, don't let any of it paralyze you through stress or overwhelm you through its magnitude. Motivate yourself. Remember, you get to be a physician one day, and so you want to think about that. Think about how great it's going to be when you are a physician. Think about how great it's going to be when you have that high MCAT score to continue to motivate you during your studies and get you ever closer to that goal of a high MCAT score. The MCAT Lucky 7 will make an appearance again at the very end of your course and give you some tips on test day, so make sure that you look out for that MCAT Lucky 7 coming back again in the future. Finally, the Kaplan tip at the bottom of this page offers you a bit more motivation here. If you make your MCAT studying useful and productive, you can make every session count and get you, like we said, closer to that higher MCAT score. Let's do a bit of review now that we've covered this lesson. Now, at the end of any given session in your Kaplan MCAT course, you're going to have homework to do, and you can find this homework listed in your online study plan. However, there's a bit of extra special homework in this particular lesson because you have to make that study plan. So that's going to be something you'll want to put on your to-do list, and as a reminder, you want to make a study plan that is detailed with every single task listed out, when you're going to do it, and making sure you account for any other personal commitments that you might have to do. Finally, make sure your study plan is realistic. We like to make sure everybody takes a day off per week, and that's going to be something that you want to build in so you have enough time to rest and digest the material that you've learned from your Kaplan course and from your studies. Along with that, another big piece of homework is to make sure you explore your online study plan. There are a lot of resources there. We want to make sure that you know how to use them all and what they all are, so you get to use them all as part of your effective studying. And finally, your actual regular homework is important as well, so see your online study